The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 27, Session 45, April 6th, 1981. Jim. Session 45 was also a maintenance session with a few other minor areas of investigation included. The sessions were at their shortest at this time while Carla was regaining her vital energy level. At the end of the session, Ra found the need to end the session somewhat prematurely. The fellows who delivered our water for our cistern had shown up and failed to read our notes on the door, which said that we were not available and that silence was required for the experiment in which we were engaged. Thus, they proceeded to knock loudly on every door that they could find, including the door to the Ra session room. Needless to say, we blocked our driveway after that experience so that we would not again be disturbed by visitors while we were having a session with Ra. Carla. This must have been a hilarious situation. I'm sorry I missed it. We were so very careful in preparing our place of working, getting the various preparations done with care and grace, then my going off to sleep while Don and Jim walked the circle of one. And then, the exquisitely careful choice of questions, listening for Ra's very soft, very uninflected words, altogether a delicate operation. And then to have loud noises and the hurrying emotions behind them, I can just see the two men going quietly ballistic. It is hard to read the constant reports of my failing energies, even now, because I remember so well the feelings of frustration and anger that I experienced as I offered myself, poor as I was, for contact. Inside, I felt the strength and power of self that was much different from my physical state, and I wondered why I had chosen such a limited physical body. Why had I not given myself a totally healthy body so I could be a better worker for the light? And yet I knew, at least intellectually and consciously, that all is perfect, that this was the very best configuration of mind and body and energy balance, that this was precisely where I needed to be. Were I not a mystic and able to access that part of me which is pure faith, I would have been tempted to give up. In the time since Don's death and the end of the Ra contact, I've come to much more of a peace with this issue, seeing clearly the way my limitations worked to refine me, to hone my sense of purpose, and make ever more substantial those joys of spirit that informed my awareness. I see them still at work, and can embrace now that fragility which has given me such fruits of consciousness and hollowed me out so well. It is the empty instrument that is able to offer the purest substance through it, and it is limitation and loss that have refined and hollowed me, and given me that transparency of spirit that moves into simple joy. I am so very glad to see each new day, I cannot express it, and this is a gift given through suffering. So often, as we look at spiritual gifts, that is true. The gaining of them can be seen to involve tragedy and pain. Yet as we experience those depths of sorrow, we also find ourselves more able to move into joy in the everyday things that are so right and so precious. Session 45, April 6th, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner. Could you give us an estimate of the instrument's physical condition now that she is rested? Ra. I am Ra. This instrument's condition as regards the bodily complex is extremely poor. This instrument is not rested. However, this instrument was eager for our contact. Questioner. Did the period of abstinence from contact help the instrument's physical condition? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. The probability of this instrument's development of what you would call disease, either of the pulmonary nature or the renal nature, was quite significant at our previous contact. You have averted a possible serious physical malfunction of this instrument's bodily complex. It is to be noted that your prayerful support was helpful, as was this instrument's unflagging determination to accept that which was best in the long run, and thus maintain the exercises recommended without undue impatience. It is to be further noted that those things which aid this instrument are in some ways contradictory and require balance. Thus, this instrument is aided by rest, but also by diversions of an active nature. This makes it more difficult to aid this instrument. However, once this is known, the balancing may be more easily accomplished. Questioner: Can you tell me if a large percentage of the wanderers here now are those of Ra? Ra: I am Ra. I can. Questioner: Are they? Ra: I am Ra. A significant portion of 6th-density wanderers are those of our social memory complex. Another large portion consists of those who aided those in South America. Another portion, those aiding Atlantis. All are 6th density and all brother and sister groups, due to the unified feeling that as we had been aided by shapes such as the pyramid, so we could aid your peoples. Questioner: Can you say if any of the 3 of us are of Ra or any of the other groups? Ra: I am Ra. Yes. Questioner: Can you say which of us are of which group? Ra: I am Ra. No. Questioner: Are all of us one of the groups that you mentioned? Ra: I am Ra. We shall go to the limits of our attempts to refrain from infringement. 2 are a 6th density origin, 1 a 5th density harvestable to 6th, but choosing to return as a wanderer due to a loving association between teacher and student. Thus you 3 form a greatly cohesive group. Questioner: Can you explain the right and left ear tone and what I call touch contact that I continually get? Ra: I am Ra. This has been covered previously. Please ask for specific further details. Questioner: I get what I consider to be tickling in my right and my left ear at different times. Is this any different as far as meaning goes from the tone that I get in my right and left ear? Ra: I am Ra. No. Questioner: Why is the left ear of the service to self contact and the right service to others? Ra: I am Ra. The nature of your physical vehicle is that there is a magnetic field positive and negative in complex patterns about the shells of your vehicle. The left portion of the head region of most entities is, upon the time-space continuum level, of a negative polarity. Questioner: Can you tell me what is the purpose or philosophy behind the 4th, 5th, and 6th density positive and negative social memory complexes? Ra: I am Ra. The basic purpose of a social memory complex is that of evolution. Beyond a certain point, the evolution of spirit is quite dependent upon the understanding of self and other self as creator. This constitutes the basis for social complexes. When brought to maturity, they become social memory complexes. The 4th density and 6th density find these quite necessary. The 5th positive uses social memory in attaining wisdom, though this is done individually. In 5th negative, much is done without aid of others. This is the last query, as this instrument needs to be protected from depletion. Are there brief queries before we close? Questioner: I just need to know if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Ra: I am Ra. All is well, my brothers. Editor's note: loud rapping at the door. Water truckers. Questioner: What did you say? Ra: I am Ra. All is well, my brothers. I leave you now in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 28, Session 46, April 15th, 1981. Jim. In querying about how best to aid two of our cats as they were about to be put under anesthetic at the veterinarian's, and how to reduce any negative influences that might have sought an inroad while the cats were being operated on, we discovered that when the investment of a second density being has been successful, that second density being attracts to it the spirit complex. And the presence of the spirit complex makes that being vulnerable to the same psychic greeting process that any third density entity may experience, given the appropriate circumstances. The ritual sentences mentioned are taken from the Book of Common Prayer of the Episcopal Church. Carla. When I was a young woman of 17, I thought I wanted a life full of children and home. But life never offered me that. Instead, I was drawn to follow a life of devotion, to Don and to the Creator. Instead of children, I've had the joy of being friend and or counselor to many courageous and seeking souls. And cats. Plenty of cats. I cannot remember being without a cat my whole life long. They delight me, and their company is always a pleasure. We relate to them as children, and they soak up a lot of my maternal feelings. Gandalf was an exceptionally devoted cat. He loved our laps and would retrieve for Don, catching the peppermint candy wrappers that Don tossed and bringing them to deposit in Don's shoe. When he became old and full of years, he was more than ever devoted, and even after he could no longer walk, if I forgot to carry him with me, he would scrape along the floor little by little to come nearer again. Needless to say, we did not forget him often, and he still lives in loving memories. Session 46, April 15th, 1981. Questioner. The one question that is bothering us, which I got in meditation, may be an inappropriate question, but I feel it is my duty to ask it because it is central to the instrument's mental condition and ours. It has to do with the two cats which we are going to have worked upon today for teeth cleaning and for the removal of a small growth from Gandalf's leg. I got the impression that there might be an inroad there for the Orion group, and I was primarily concerned if there was anything that we could do for protection of these two cats. It may be out of line for me to ask this question, but I feel it is my duty to ask it. Would you please give me any information that you can on that subject? Ra. I am Ra. The entity, mind-body-spirit complex, Gandalf, being harvestable third density, is open to the same type of psychic attack to which you yourselves are vulnerable. Therefore, through the mechanism of images and dreams, it is potentially possible for negative concepts to be offered to this mind-body-spirit complex, thus having possible deleterious results. The entity Fairchild, though harvestable through investment, does not have the vulnerability to attack in as great amount due to a lack of the mind complex activity and the distortion of conscious devotion. For protection of these entities, we might indicate two possibilities. Firstly, the meditation putting on the armor of light. Secondly, the repetition of short ritual sentences known to this instrument from the establishment which distorts spiritual oneness for this instrument. This instrument's knowledge will suffice. This will aid due to the alerting of many discarnate entities also aware of these ritual sentences. The meditation is appropriate at the time of the activity on behalf of these entities. The ritual may be repeated with efficacy from this time until the safe return at convenient intervals. Questioner. I'm not familiar with the ritual sentences. If the instrument is familiar, you need not answer this, but which sentences do you mean? Editor's note. Silence. No response from Ra. Questioner. I assume that the instrument is familiar with them then? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Can you tell me something of the little growth on Gandalf's leg and if it is of danger to him? Ra. I am Ra. The cause of such growths has been previously discussed. The danger to the physical body complex is slight given the lack of repeated stimulus to anger. The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 29, Session 48, April 22nd, 1981. Jim. The spiritual transfer of energy is apparently possible for Carla in any sexual energy transfer. It happens without any particular effect on her part and seems due, primarily, to her nature as one who considers all of her actions, first in the light of how she may be of service to another. This kind of spiritual energy transfer, however, is possible for anyone to achieve through a conscious mental dedication of the shared sexual intercourse for the purpose of achieving such a transfer. With that dedication consciously made, the male will transfer the physical energy, which he has in abundance, to the female and refresh her, and the female will transfer the mental, emotional, and spiritual energies that she has had in abundance, and inspire the male. The kinds of energy transferred by each biological sex are determined by the nature that is unique to each. The biological male tends to express the male principle of that quality which reaches. The biological female tends to express the female principle of that quality which awaits the reaching. The orgasm is the point at which the transfer takes place, although well-mated partners do not necessarily need to experience the orgasm in order to achieve the transfer. Carla. Since these sessions were recorded, I've continued to study the sexual part of red ray activity, with the hope of finding ways to share the beauty and joy I have found in my sexuality with other people who wish to move into the experience of sacramental sex. More and more, I'm convinced that we all have the ability to move into this vibratory level, where intercourse becomes ever more deeply a holy Eucharist of red ray. I think that this orgasmic energy is pure love, and that as we experience this ecstasy, we are simply knowing the Creator's vibration at rest. I suspect that the universe dwells in a state of orgasm, a timeless ecstasy. So much of our culture's training is bent on blunting the power of passion, so that social strictures may be observed, that the spontaneity of the act itself is lost. And the constant bombardment of sexual images in commercials and advertisements of every kind sharpen the desire for more and more. More partners, more unorthodox experiences, more thrills, more novelty. In contrast to this, there is the red ray part of self and its natural functions, natural and right and, like all other natural functions, something to fulfill in privacy, and with an eye to grace and purity of form in the doing. Once a man has found the wisdom to fix his desire upon woman, the goddess, as incarnate in his mate, and the woman has opened her heart to man, as incarnate in her mate, there is laid the stage for an ever deeper practice of this glorious natural sharing of energy. It has been a blessing to me, certainly, as I apparently ran out of energy some years ago, but am still alive and kicking, thanks in no small part to the truly fine natural functions of one James McCarty, a man most lovingly sensitive to the goddess within. Session 48, April 22nd, 1981. Questioner. I have a question from the instrument that I will read. You've suggested several times that sexual energy transfers aid the instrument's vital energy and this contact. It seems that this is not true for all people, that the sexual circuitry and the spiritual circuitry are not the same. Is this instrument an anomaly, or is the positive effect of sexual activity on spiritual energy normal for all third density beings? Ra. I am Ra. This instrument, though not anomalous, is somewhat less distorted towards the separation of mind, body, and spirit than many of your third density entities. The energies of sexual transfer would, if run through the underdeveloped spiritual, electrical, or magnetic complex, which you call circuitry, effectually blow out that particular circuit. Contrarily, the full spiritual energies run through bodily complex circuitry will also adversely affect the undeveloped circuit of the bodily complex. Some there are, such as this instrument, who have not in the particular incarnation chosen at any time to express sexual energy through the bodily circuitry. Thus, from the beginning of such an entity's experience, the body and spirit express together in any sexual action. Therefore, to To transfer sexual energy for this instrument is to transfer spiritually as well as physically. This instrument's magnetic field, if scrutinized by one sensitive, will show these unusual configurations. This is not unique to one entity, but is common to a reasonable number of entities who, having lost the desire for orange and yellow ray sexual experiences, have strengthened the combined circuitry of spirit, mind, and body to express the totality of beingness in each action. It is for this reason also that the social intercourse and companionship is very beneficial to this instrument, it being sensitive to the more subtle energy transfers.